Hello, my name is Alex Davidson. I'm with Hobby Quest, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build the Airhawk. Now, the Airhawk is a very durable and very stable glider. This is a really impressive glider. It can glide for really long times. So we actually don't have an engine on it. Instead, it's just powered through the initial throw from whoever is throwing it. As you can see, it's kind of a vintage style, which is kind of unique to our planes. You know, it has almost this like 1950s kind of look to it. I think it's pretty cool. So this plane takes 3 sessions to build. The first session is building the wings. As you can see, it's made of paper and this structure with the balsa wood. So that's the first session. The second session is putting the wings onto the fuselage and gluing the fuselage into place. And then the third session is finishing up the tail and balancing it and making sure it flies well, and then of course flying it. So this flies best in indoor situations. Because it's a glider and it doesn't have an engine on it, it's a lot more sensitive to wind gusts and things of that sort. So this does fly outside, but inside in like a gymnasium would be the ideal conditions to be flying this airplane. So I'm going to show you how to put this together. So the tools to build this plane are as follows. Firstly, we're going to need our 3-second glue. It's very important to remind all the kids that this is for the instructor only. Nobody else is allowed to touch this glue. It can be very dangerous because it dries so quickly. So we have our 3-second glue and spray. Secondly, we have our sanding blocks and sandpaper. This is going to be important. Every single kid is going to get one of these later on in the build. Now next we have markers, and markers are going to be used for coloring on the plane, making it unique. So everyone's going to have a different plane. Next we have our glue sticks and our Elmer's glue as well. So we have all the glue, and then we have our tape. We have both double-sided and regular tape. We're going to need to have both of these because these are very good to have in case of any repairs that need to be done. Next we have our scissors, the child-safe scissors. Every single kid is going to get these at one point, and there's a lot of cutting to do with this, so make sure you have one pair of scissors for every student. And that is it for the tools that we were going to need. We're going to need every single one of these things, so make sure that you have all of these in the toolbox before you get started with this. And one other thing is pencils. Pencils are necessary for it because the kids are going to need to do some markings with it, and we need to have the pencils with us as well. So in our package for the Airhawk, we have a whole bunch of things. This is one of those planes that we kind of start out with just the bare bones, and we're actually going to build most everything from scratch. So I'm going to pull everything out of my bag here. What I would usually do for this is that I would have all of the kids come up to me. I haven't handed anything out yet, and I just want to show them what's in our package. Now, firstly, we want to keep this giant bag. We're going to use this for part of the gluing later. We want to have something to work on that's not going to get messy and won't get on the table. So we're going to keep this. We also have our instructions. This is a written list of instructions along with the part that will be going onto the fuselage. And then we also have this piece of paper, which has the blueprints for our wings. So this one's very important. I always show the kids that when I take this out of the bag, what I'm going to do is unfold this and try to make it as flat as possible. We want that to lie flat on the table. So next we have a whole bunch of pieces of wood here. Well, firstly I have my elevator and rudder. I have 9 pieces of balsa wood right here. So all these sticks, these are going to be needed for building the plane, like on the wings and everything. So we want to be really careful with this. One of the things I always tell the kids right off the bat is that these pieces of wood are really fragile. And I show them, like, if you just bend it at all, then, like, you know, put too much force on it, it will break. The reason why we have to use this really light wood is because it flies a lot better. If we were using like a really heavy type of wood, it wouldn't fly as well. But the trade-off is that it's very delicate, so you have to be really careful with it. So I'm going to put that off to the side. We have a few triangles. The triangles are going to be in the wings as well. This is going to help with the structure of it later. We're going to see how those play in effect later on. Now, we also have the fuselage. This is that giant piece of wood here. This fuselage is going to be part of, the whole structure of it. It's going to help hold everything together. So this one is the really cool piece right there. Then we have our the body of the airplane itself. This would be the other part of the fuselage. This is the main stick that goes from forward to back on the entire plane. So we have that. Then we have this plastic piece for the tail, which we'll see later on. And then we have our double-sided tape. This will also be for the tail. So this should be everything that you have in your bag. Once you have had all of the kids take everything out, everything goes out on the table just like this, I would bring them back up to my table and we can start building this. So now that we have all of the kids up at our desk and everyone's ready and they're all watching what we're doing, the first thing we do is we look at the instructions and we see that the first thing we do is cut out the wing design of from the bottom of this. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut out the wings here. I'm going to start out with this wing because you can see this has the lower numbers on it. This is our first wing that we're going to use. So I'm going to cut this one first. So it's important to tell the kids to be as careful as they can. Cut right onto the edge and be very, very, very careful with this. We want this to be really, really clean. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this all the way out, all the way around it. So now that I've cut out both wings, I've cut them out as precisely as I can. I have a couple extra pieces of garbage here. So I'm going to put this off to the side. I'm going to throw that into the garbage later. So now you're going to see these two wings. Now each stick has a number on it. Every single one has a number. So of course we're going to start with number 1. So once all of the kids have this cut out and they're ready to go, I'm going to bring them up to the table and I'm going to show them how to do this part. So first I'm going to take this, I'm going to put this wing off to the side. I don't need that one right now. I'm just going to be working on this. So starting with number 1, I'm going to grab one of my sticks and I'm going to lay it across big number 1 here. Now this one actually fits rather nicely into place, but the end of it doesn't have the exact same angle as it does on the paper. So I'm just going to take my sandpaper, which is right here, and my sanding block, and I'm going to use this to just shave down that corner just a little bit. And I'm going to show the kids how to use the sandpaper and how to use the sanding block. To be very careful with it. Kids oftentimes start out by just grabbing it by the end like that and trying to go at it, and that's just going to break it. So what you want to do is hold it right up next to it. I usually hold it on the end of a table, and we can use that to sand it. So now that I have that little edge, I can look at this, and now it's going to fit nicely into place. So now that my stick is measured out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and just make sure that it aligns very nicely, just like this. And then I'm going to take my glue stick and I'm going to glue on top of the paper. It's very important to note that I am on top of the plastic because I do not want the glue to get onto the table that we're working on. So we're going to just put it like that, and then I'm going to grab my stick and I'm going to glue the stick as well, because I find that it works best if there's glue on both parts. Now the thing to note is that we don't want to stick it on while it is still on the plastic, because we want this wing to be perfectly flat. So I'm going to take it off the plastic and then place it onto here just like this and make sure that it's perfectly straight, just like that. That way we're going to get a nice flat wing. So now we're going to go over to the second one. I have my second stick here. This one seems to be just the right size already. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim down the edges just to make sure it's nice and flat, but I'm not going to try to take any length off of it because I don't want it to change much. I just want it to be a nice flat surface on both sides. There we are. So now, yeah, that still looks good. So I'm going to glue this on the bottom, like onto the paper here. Again, I do it only on the plastic. I don't want to glue anything while it's not on the plastic. And then I take my stick and I'm just going to put it across like this. And now, again, this is very important. We take this off of the plastic and put the stick onto it while it's on the table. This is going to make sure that our wing is perfectly flat. So I'm going to press that paper down and then put this in place, just like that. So now that we have that, we can move on to the smaller sticks. So of course we have them numbered here. You can see it goes 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes lower. And the reason for that is that if we start off with the smaller sticks and we mess it up or it gets cut a little bit too short, we can't make a stick longer. But if we do have a long stick we made a little bit too short, we can always make it shorter and make it one of these pieces instead. So just to not generate as much waste, it's good to start out with the larger pieces. So I'm going to grab another stick of balsa, and what I'm going to do is measure this out. I'm going to put it in just like this, and now I'm going to use my pencils. I'm grab a pencil here. So, with my pencil, I'm going to mark where this stick has to be cut. It has to be cut right there in order for me to do this. Now the thing is, I don't want to actually cut it right there, because if it cuts just a little bit too short, it's no longer going to fit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this stick just a little bit too long, just like that. So now I have a little bit of extra length. But now what I can do is sand this down to the right spot. So here we go. I'm going to just sand this down, just like so. Okay, good. Now that I have that, I'm going to just double check to make sure it's just right. There we go, perfect fit. So I'm going to take my glue stick once again. I'm going to put this on top of the plastic. Put the glue onto the paper. Put the glue onto the stick, just like this. And now I'm going to stick it into place. But remember, again, we take this off of the plastic, put it very firmly against the table. We want this to be nice and straight. And we're just gonna put that right in there. Now it's almost time to send the kids back to the seats. I know they've been standing up here for a very long time, but I want them to understand the basics of how all of this goes together before they go back, because this allows them to build the wings by themselves. So the last thing I want to show them is, of course, 4, 5, and 6 are exactly the same step as we just did with number 3, so they should understand that. But the last thing I want to show them are the triangles. So I'm going to just put some glue down there, put some glue on the triangle, and I can just go ahead and stick that in place just like that. That's going to hold it in place right there. So that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to ask the kids to go back to their seats. They can go ahead and get started with this, and as the kids are starting to work on this, of course they have to start out by getting all the glue, and you're going to give out the glue sticks and the scissors and everything, and they're going to get started on this. While they are getting started on this, you as the instructor are going to be finishing up your wings, and then you can go around and help other students. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to put the rest of the wings together, and I'll see you in a minute. And there we are, there is our first wing. Now, once I've finished my first wing, of course, I'm just going to go right on and do the second wing. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. It's the exact same thing as we just did, so there's nothing terribly different. So I'm just going to fast forward through that as well. There we are. So now that we're done with our wings, as you can see, they're nice and perfectly flat. That's exactly what we want out of them. So I'm going to take these and I'm actually going to glue them with the 3-second glue. Now, this is something that you can do as the class is working. You can glue it as the kids are working. You don't have to wait until everyone's finished and then glue everything. It's actually best to try to do it as they're working so that it's not so much work for you at the end. That's going to take a lot of time. So to glue it, what we're going to do is put it right onto our plastic once more, just in case. I'm going to hold that down nice and flat. You know, this wing went together very flat. I want to make sure it stays that way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it. Now I'm going to use the 3-second glue for this. And the thing is, while the kids are working, you want to be gluing it as they're working. You don't want to wait until they're finished and then glue everything, because then that's going to be a ton of gluing for you later on, and it's going to take a lot of time. So you want to do this as they're working on it. But once we have finished our wing, I'm just going to show you how this goes together. I'm going to put a little dot of glue at each point. Make sure you don't put in enough to make it overflow onto the table that you're working on, because that would not be good. So we're just going to put one dot on each point. I'm just going to put a little bit of extra around that triangle. And there we are. So now we have a dot on each spot. I'm going to take my spray. It's very important to tell the kids to sit back for this. You don't want to be really close when you're spraying this, and also you always spray it down. You never lift something up and spray it like that. You always spray it when it's on the table. So I'm going to just give that a nice little spray, just like this. There we are. And that's all we need. And now, this should be drying. I tell the kids, don't touch this quite yet. You know, although it's mostly dry and it's holding itself together, if you touch it, you can get a little bit onto your fingers. So just wait about a minute before you can touch anything. So that's what we're going to do to both of our wings. And once everyone has done with that, we're actually going to be finished with the first day. So let me show you what to do. Now that everyone's wings are already put together, everything is good to go. Now we're going to put this all away for the next session. So first thing the kids are going to do is they're going to take their pencil and they're going to put their name on this line. It says built by and then their name. So I'm going to go ahead and write Alex on there. So built by Alex. So now I'm going to take this, stack them on top of each other just like that. I'm going to take everything together, make sure everything is in a nice, neat pile, just like so. And now I'm going to grab the large bag from before, and we're going to put everything into this bag. Very carefully putting everything in. We don't want anything to break, not after we've put so much work into it, of course. So here, actually, I'm going to put this in separately. This will all go in first. And there we are. So this is ready for the next session. We're just going to get everything in here, collect everything up, get everything into a nice pile. Make sure you collect all of your scissors and the pencil and the sandpaper, all the garbage from like the clippings from the scissors. Make sure that all of that comes back and goes into the garbage or to your toolbox, depending on what it is. And just make sure you clean up after yourselves. So once you have all of this, you're ready to put it away, and we will be ready for the next session. So now that you come back for session 2, everyone gets their plane back. We're going to just gently take everything out. This should have all of our things from the previous session, including our already assembled wings. So I'm going to put those off to the side. And next we have the fuselage here. We have the other part of the fuselage right there. We have our extra balsa wood pieces, tail parts, double-sided tape, the structure for the tail, and lastly we have this piece of paper which will be used for the fuselage. So first thing we do is we want to take this part and cut out the fuselage here. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to use the scissors and very carefully cut this out of place. So now that this part is cut out, as you can see here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on top of my plastic bag, and I'm going to glue this into place. I'm going to glue these two parts onto the paper. So first I'm going to go with the stick. So I'm going to use my glue sticks, which I had from before. Here we are. So on top of the plastic, I'm going to glue this down. Here we are. Now I'm going to put the glue onto the stick itself. And just like before, I want to actually attach it while it's sitting flat on the table, just in case. I don't want this to be bent in any way. So I'm going to attach it while it's straight on the table like this. I'm just going to glue that right in place. There we are. So the thing to point out is that your stick is going to be much larger than the piece of paper. What you want to do is you want to line up the front with it and let all the trailing parts of it go along the back, like this. So that's how we want to put it on. We just want to have the trailing parts back there and have this all line up at the front. So now that we've done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the rest of the fuselage in place. I'm going to take my glue stick here and just glue all the way along this paper here. There we are. No need to go too crazy with this. You just have to get enough for it to hold it in place. And now I'm going to put glue onto this. Here we go. Perfect. So now I'm going to take this and stick it right onto here. So now is a good time for the kids to start decorating, because we have to, as the instructor, we have to start gluing a lot of these pieces together. And that's something that only we can do. We have to use our 3-second glue with that. That's something the kids can't use themselves. So what I do is I hand out the markers and I let the kids start coloring our fuselage, and they can even color the planes as well. The thing to point out is that if they put too much ink onto this, it'll actually punch a hole through the paper. So they have to make sure to not put too much on. Just go ahead and color it, but don't make it like super dark. So while they are coloring it, what we are going to do is we're going to go around to each student and we're going to start putting everything together. So firstly, what I would do is I would go around to the wings. First thing to do is to make sure that they are perfectly flush against the side. I can actually see on mine there's a bit of a bump right here on the top. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use my sandpaper and just quickly sand that down so it's nice and flat. There we are. I'm going to do the same thing for the other wing. I'm seeing two parts just slightly standing out, and I want that to be perfectly flat against each other because that will hold together a lot better when we glue these together. So now that they're like that, I'm going to put this on top of my plastic, and I'm going to ask the student to hold up a ruler. So we have a ruler here, and we want that to be at 10 centimeters. That is our dihedral. So what that means is that one wing is flat on the table, the other one reaches up and touches that 10 centimeter mark. So we're going to want it to be right about there. And while the student is holding that, we're going to take our 3-second glue. And we are going to glue that right in place. I usually just put a couple of dots there. Here we are, I'm just going to double check. Perfect. And I'm just going to give that a light little spray. I usually hold this for a couple seconds just to make sure that it holds perfectly. Then I flip it over and just put 2 little dots on the bottom just to make sure that it's holding it extra tight. There we are. And now we have our wings. So now that that's assembled, I'm going to put that off on the side. Just like that. And now I'm going to reinforce the fuselage. So right now the only thing holding it together is our glue sticks, which is not the best at holding things together with things of this type of structure. So I'm just going to put a couple dots all the way along it and then give it a spray. Just like that. And that should hold everything together very nicely. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the wings onto this. And this is something you'll actually notice we didn't cut into this before. That's because a lot of times the kids have a really hard time with this and they don't quite understand it. So what I would do as the instructor is I carry either a box cutter or my scissors around, and I'm just going to put a cut right in here. So I'm just going to cut right through there. Just one cut like that. That's all we should need. And now we will be able to slide our wings into place, just like this. The paper seems to have come off the bottom on mine a little bit. That's okay. Here we are, making sure that it's aligned right in the center, just like that. I'm going to put some glue onto this. I'm not going to spray it quite yet. I'm going to put some glue on, just a couple dots right there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it up and look at it and make sure that it's perfectly aligned in the center. I don't want it to be lopsided at all. If you're confident that it's in the exact right space, I'm going to hold it down and give that a quick little spray, just like that. I'm going to hold it in place as it dries, and then it should be good to go. There we are. And that is our wing setup. So once you're done with that, you can hand this back to the student. They can continue coloring, and then you move on to the next student and you start gluing theirs together. It's kind of a process. You run through one kid after another, and while they're doing that, they're coloring these. You can tell them they can color the other side on the blank wood if they choose. They can color basically anywhere they want. Even along the stick, just anything they like, they can color that. And that will not only make it so that each plane is unique and different, but it also gives the kids something to do while you are gluing everything together. So one thing to note additionally is that the class structure is like kind of fluid with this. You can do whatever works best for the current class and whatever works best with the current situation. Another way of doing this, if you have a larger class, is that you want to do kind of more of an assembly line type of thing, where you as the instructor are sitting in one place and you have the kid bring everything up to you and you start gluing that, and as you're gluing, you're going to ask another student, hey, can you come up and stand here with all of your parts so that as soon as you're done with this one, you can immediately go to the next one without having to get up and move all of your equipment with them. So that's going to get it going a lot faster. This step requires the instructor to do a lot. These are things that the kids cannot do. They are not allowed to handle this glue, and this whole part goes together with the glue. So whatever process works best to streamline this and get it as fast as possible, that's the best way to do it. So there are a couple of different ways of doing that. You could go to each student if it's a smaller class, or if it's a larger one, just have them come up to you with all of the stuff, and that'll make everything go a lot smoother. So the next step with this is the tail. Now, this is if you have enough time. A lot of times, it depends on the class. It depends on how fast the kids can work. But at this point, what we should be doing is putting the tail on. If you don't get to that step quite yet and it's, you're running out of time, that's fine. You can do the tail next week. But right now I'm going to work under the assumption that you are working with the tail this week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab our tail piece. I always show the kids that the big flat side goes down. So that means that the big flat side right there is pointed straight down. A lot of times they'll put it on upside down, and then the tail won't go together quite right. It won't make sense as they're putting it on, and things could go in the wrong way. So it's important they put that on the right way. Next, we're going to grab our double-sided tape. You're going to see these two pieces here. So I'm going to take the first piece, that's the larger one, and I'm going to put this onto the bottom. Now, the thing I always explain to the kids is that this is two pieces of paper with tape right in the middle, and it's pushed between them. So all we have to do is carefully unpeel this. The tape is going to go on one side of the paper or the other. In this case, it chose my yellow side, not my white side. So I'm going to put this on right underneath like this and stick it in place. Now I'm going to take my other piece of tape and show them that I'm going to unpeel this once more. There we go. And now this is going to go on the top. Now this is really important because I want to show them that we have this vertical wall sticking straight up out of the tail piece. And this part has to go on either side of that. Now technically the correct side is the one that has more room on it, but if the kid accidentally puts it on the other side, it's fine. It doesn't make a huge difference. It'll still fly just fine. But I always tell the kids to put it on the side that has more room. And again, if they accidentally put it on the wrong side, don't try to take it off and put it on the right side, because then you're going to lose some of the stickiness, and that's a lot worse than just having it slightly off center. So now that we have all of this done and the tail has the two pieces of tape on it, I like to stop right there, because if we try to package this together with these pieces on, it's going to be very difficult for us because we have all this stuff to carry and these parts are just waiting to get broken by like getting hit or pushed from the side. So it's best to leave that exactly as is. So with everything like this, what we can do is we can go into our toolbox and we will find a set of rubber bands. And what we can do is grab a rubber band, we put it right onto the end of our wing just like this, and now we can actually put all the extra pieces. That's the balsa wood and the pieces of the tail. They can all go in right there, and now we can actually keep track of whose parts are whose. Just like this. And of course we know whose this is because we have written our names on the bottom of the wing already. So that should finish up this plane. We package all of this up and then it's ready for session 3. So now that we're ready for session 3, what we're going to do is we're going to hand this all back to the kids. They're going to take everything out. Now the reason that we kept the balsa wood is for if we need to do any repairs later on or anything like that. This isn't actually necessary for the rest of the building, but I like to have it with us just in case we need some extra pieces to help with us. So I'm going to take all the parts off of our wing here, including the rubber band. I always get the rubber bands back from the kids because this is going to be a really big distraction with them. They're going to be trying to like stretch this around, and rubber bands are one of the most distracting things in the world to a kid. So always take the rubber bands back. So now that we're ready with that, what we're going to do is I'm just going to show the students. I'm going to take the paper off of the bottom here, making sure that the double-sided tape remains. So the paper comes off. And now I take my elevator. I say, don't stick anything on yet. I want everyone to come up to me just to watch how this happens. So with it just like this, I make sure that the flames are facing forward. So the red part is forward on the plane. That way the elevators, these two flaps on the back, are facing back. We want those to face back. If those face forward, it'll be much more difficult to adjust this plane. So we make sure that the flames are facing forward. I always show them I don't just stick it on because then it could go on crooked. And as soon as you put it on, you can't take it off. If you try to take it off, what's going to happen is the styrofoam is going to rip apart because the styrofoam is not as strong as the tape. So I'm going to put this on so that just the front corner of it is touching, nothing else. So I'm going to put it on just like that, and then slowly lift the elevators up so that it touches. And now I know it's perfectly halfway on our part. So next part, I'm going to take the paper off of the top piece right here, showing just the tape right there. And again, the flames face forward. At this point, it should be kind of obvious. If it's facing like this, you're going to see that they're not going to match very well. If you hold it like this, you can see that the flames are facing the same way. I'm going to take this and just stick it right onto the side like this. So now, this is actually finished. It's very important to tell the kids not to fly this yet. You know, it's not ready to fly. Although it looks like it is, it's actually not. So first thing is we have to balance this. Balancing this is very difficult for like the kids to understand at the beginning. You have to kind of walk through this with them. So what we want is I want to be able to put my fingers on the middle of the wing, right here. But if I do that, this falls back. That means that this is not balanced. We want the balance to be right in the middle of the wing. So in order to do this, you're going to get these metal parts with the plane, and you can actually glue it into here. Don't just put both in, you want to just make sure it's balanced. Sometimes they don't need anything. The thing about this is that this wood has different densities, and you don't really know what it's going to be until the plane is put together. So don't start adjusting it until you're sure that it's not balanced. Because once you've put it in, you can't take it out. Alternatively, what you can do is put clay in here, and the clay will work just as well as the metal. So I have my clay. So I'm going to take my clay, and I'm going to put it right into those slots right there. So here we are, we're just going to put it right in there. And because there are holes there, it's not going to fall out. There we are. So now, let's see how that looks. I should be able to put my fingers right here. It's still a little bit that way. It's still falling back just a little bit. I'm going to add a tiny bit more clay. This is something that the kids can do for themselves. They can help balance it, or they can actually do the balancing themselves as long as you watch them. Kids, of course, don't really understand moderation all that great, so a lot of times they'll just take a giant ball of it and stick it on the front and say, great, now it's good to go. Well, we have to make sure that it's the right amount. So now we're going to find that my plane is pretty nicely balanced. My fingers are right in the middle of the wings, so this should be perfect. Now this is ready to fly. Once everyone's plane is like this and it's nicely balanced, now we can take the kids outside and we can show them how to fly it. So first, to fly this, what we want to do is we hold it right under the wings. We don't want to hold it from the back or from the front. We want to hold it right where the balance is. So with it just like that, we throw it forward. It's very important to note that we don't throw it like this. This is bad. This will break the wings just from the fact that it is like getting like pushed through the air like that. We always throw it straight. So the kids can have fun. They can go ahead and start throwing this. This is a pretty durable plane. That being said, we still do need to bring extra things out with us for when we're flying it. So I usually bring out one extra package of the plane just so that we have the extra parts in case we need it. And I also bring out my 3-second glue. This is in case, you know, if the wings snap or anything like that, we can use the 3-second glue on this. And then additionally, if we get a rip in the paper, the best thing to use for that would be our tape. So we always want to bring our tape with us as well. Additionally, we want to use our double-sided tape if the elevator or the rudder are like coming off and like, you know, not quite sticking on as well as they should. We can use the double-sided tape for that. So I always bring an extra package along with everything that you see here out with me in order to make sure everything goes well. Also, I usually like to bring out my clay because maybe we'll find out when we get outside that one of the students didn't quite balance it perfectly. We need a little bit more clay or a little bit less clay. It's good to have that with us just in case. So that's how we fly the plane, and it's a really fun one. I'm sure you're going to have a good time. So a couple of additional tips for flying this. This flies best inside, especially when there's no wind or anything like that. This flies really great in a gymnasium or anything along those lines. So when we fly this, we want to give this a couple flights. We want to let the kids get really used to flying this. We want it to fly really nicely. But you'll notice that if you fly it quickly, what's going to happen is it's going to start going way up. And that's actually normal for it to do that because it's supposed to glide at a pretty reasonable speed. And if you go any faster, it's going to start climbing. But we can actually have some fun with that. Once they have gotten that far and they're used to it, what we can do is we can show them to hold it like this with your finger behind the wing like this. And what you can actually do is fly it sideways at like a 45-degree angle upward. You fly it straight like that. And this one you can throw it really, really fast, and it'll go way up, climbing all around, and then it'll flatten out and fly really far. So this is actually a ton of fun to do with the kids. You want to do this after you've already taught them how to fly it and everyone's kind of used to it. Now you can go into these more advanced techniques. So another thing about this is that once the clay is balanced and everything is kind of working nicely on it, if you're having any issues with lift or drag or anything like that, you want to adjust your tailpiece at this point, not by adding or subtracting any clay. The exception to that is if you're starting to put this at like really extreme angles in order to make it fly right, that's when it's okay to start adding or taking away clay to see if it'll fly better. But for the most part, once this is balanced out, we're going to be using this for the adjustment of how it flies rather than this. So that's just some important tips on how to fly this. And yeah, this thing flies really great inside. It's a really, really good glider.